Okay, ladies and gentlemen, coaches, if you could just give me a moment of attention before I hand this over to Mr. Peter Mellor, your guest speaker. His topic is the role of the assistant coach at all levels, and he is probably the most qualified person to talk on this role, as he's done a lot of that role throughout his career. And just to highlight a few things, after a long and distinguished career in England, which I think was 18 years, he moved to Canada for 1 year, and then he moved to Florida and started working in the youth programs. He eventually became the US soccer's guru of goalkeeping for many years, was the assistant coach of the under-17 national program, was part of establishing the residency program for the under-17 national team. And while in that position, he was also an assistant coach for the under-20 national team and the under-23, the Olympic national team. He has coached in the Olympic Games, he's coached in World Cup finals, and he is, more than that, he is a wonderful person, and I hope you enjoy all he has to say. I'm proud to introduce your guest speaker, Mr. Peter Mellor.
Thank you, Gwen. Thanks a lot. Well, welcome to all my fellow coaches here. It's a great pleasure to be a part of the NSCAA convention, and it's funny because I look at my membership number and it's 330, which dates back to 1975 when I was still playing. So I'm very proud, to be standing here. Can't even work out how many years it is since then, being able to share with you good people. The session today, I want to make, very sort of interactive, but I'll go through a little bit of my thoughts on this particular role, which is the the role of the assistant coach at all levels. And I'm going to start off by, Gwen quite kindly said some nice things about me, and I look at why I feel I'm qualified to share my opinions and thoughts and this in no way is names dropping, but you'll recognize a few of the names that I've been fortunate to develop myself because I've been associated with, going back to 1986, Bora Milutinovic, and then I've worked with Bob Gansler, Steve Sampson, Clive Charles, Bruce Arena, John Ellinger, obviously, for a long time, Bob Bradley, Jay Hoffman, Jay Miller, Roy Reese back in the early U17 days, and of course, good old Ziggy Schmidt at Seattle. So, over those years, I was able very much to listen and learn from some great coaches, not just on the field, but off the field, about what is that role. And obviously, the head coach is the head coach. At the end of the day, what they say goes, because it's their head that's on the block. So as an assistant, it's very, very important that we look at what our role is. And I put here the 4 top qualities that I think are so important. And first and foremost is loyalty, no matter what, okay? You've got to, as an assistant coach, you may have aspirations wanting to become a head coach, but first and foremost, as an assistant, that loyalty is huge, okay? Building up, whatever the personality of that head coach is, building up the correct loyalty, that coach feels comfortable, that you've got their back, and that you can certainly help them do their job. It comes to the second point I've got there, the support of the head coach's decisions at all times. Well, we want to be our own person too as a coach, as an assistant, and we don't always agree. And I can relate, many times in particular, because I spent a lot of time with John Ellinger, with the under-17 national program. And I can remember a lot of times within the four walls of the coaching changing room, disagreeing with some of his thoughts or ideas. That's not to say he was wrong. Because I think as an assistant coach, you've also got to understand that this game is a game of opinions. And your opinion is equally should be heard as the head coach's. But the moment you leave that room, if the head coach says, no, this is what we're doing, I appreciate you don't agree with me, you have to be seen to be supporting him. And that's the loyalty aspect too, okay? So you can't go as an assistant, if a player's saying, oh, I can't believe, he's playing me in this position, he knows my best positions, that you have to support the head coach. So how you manage those situations become crucial, because you don't want something coming back from the player to the head coach, finding out, hey, the assistant coach just threw me under the bus, okay? And as I say to John Ellinger now, we were at Rail Salt Lake for 3 years, the first startup of Rail Salt Lake's program, and we still talk, after 3 years we got fired, both of us. That made me a real coach. So I'm happy to say I'm a real coach now because I've been fired. But when he calls me up now, I have fun with him, obviously, because we're still very close. And I'll say, okay. You go, well, this, and this. I say, John, all I can say is if you'd have listened to me when we were at Salt Lake, we'd still be there. Right. But that has to be, between the two of you. Stay in control of emotions at all time. And this is right across the board, because the game creates passion and it, creates feelings and disagreements, with referees' calls and what players are doing or not doing. So can you be that stable in influence for the head coach? Because a lot of head coaches go off, depending on their style and that, go off on tangents. And again, I can remember incidents at Salt Lake with John, who is very placid, but occasionally enough's enough. Bad calls or whatever, and especially at the pro level when it's your livelihood and you don't want to be fired. It's all about results. So there you've got to be careful, because the head coach can boil over with decisions. And the next thing is, here they are, the one particular instance, walking out at Rice Eccles Stadium to the center circle, and I know he's going for the referees, okay? And I'm chasing after him, grabbing his coattail, saying, John, don't. And he's, get off, I'm the head coach. He'd lost it, which we've all done at some stage. And then all I said was, you want a $1,000 fine? And he went, you're right. So as an assistant coach, we are the one, we don't want the head coach keeping us calm. It needs the assistant coach helping the head coach through, because again, they're next on the block at the end of the day. So can we protect the head coach? And I don't know what I'm doing there, but we try, right? Okay, again, honesty with the head coach, players, staff, and officials. You have to be very tight and understanding, and anything that's discussed between the two of you has to stay between the two of you. You can't go out, sharing that information. Before you know it, it's around the locker room, the dressing room, and so on. So that becomes crucially important. And again, I've got knowledge of the game. And obviously my background is predominantly with the goalkeeping aspects of it. And in the early days, goalkeeping was very much a new entity where we, MLS, we brought in goalkeeping coach specific and so on, and in our youth clubs, goalkeeping trainers. But at the end of the day, your knowledge of the game is important whether you're a goalkeeping coach or not. You've got to learn the big picture. So as an assistant, you constantly need to be a sponge, picking up as much information as you can. And I'll go back to my earlier statement, not necessarily, agreeing with everything you hear, but dissecting it and maybe taking a little bit of it and throwing away a part of it and putting it with what you're about. So knowledge of the game, never stop learning. Never. That comes into, obviously, always seeking additional coaching education. And within your clubs, youth organizations in particular, I would love to see every club has an educational program for the coaches. Okay? And obviously, as an assistant coach, a lot of final aspirations is to become one day a head coach. So always seeking that additional coaching experience, but also being patient. Okay? Able to coach a unit or the team at any time. Now, this is an interesting one because a lot of assistant coaches don't always get the opportunity to work with the team. They're just there to support the coach and that. Okay? But in your development as an assistant, you need to be out there working, whether it's with the team or a unit of the team. So creating that relationship with your coach, for them to have the confidence that you can do that. Because in your own development for down the road, when you want to become the number one, you need to have that. So always, looking at working with your coach, your head coach, to say, hey, let me do something that you're comfortable with. Because I see too many assistant coaches just standing around. And it happens a lot in goalkeeping in particular. Take the goalkeeper, warm the goalkeeper up, and then give me the goalkeepers and just watch from the sideline, coach, okay, or assistant coach. We need to get all of our assistant coaches practical time on the field. So if we've got head coaches in here too, hopefully, which we will have, let's make sure that we do what we can, to develop those assistants. Player management. As an assistant coach, it's quite different than the head coach's role with player management. Because you have to be the one that really, and I've got it at the bottom, is the fly on the wall in the locker room or in the organization. Or teams, whatever your situation is. Because you have to be able to basically manage those players. Those players, there's going to be some issues that have got to be addressed, and maybe the head coach doesn't need to know about it. But by being this fly on the wall in the locker room, it's surprising what you can pick up as an assistant coach. That was what I did at Salt Lake. I just went in, shook hands with every player every morning, told them a good old English humor joke, and they were probably glad to see the back of me. But at the end of the day, I'd hear the little things, and oh yeah, I won so much in Vegas at the weekend. Okay, just listening to make sure where they're at in their development as a player and all of that. I'm not going to go run back to the head coach and tell them, hey, so-and-so was in Vegas. I'm only going to do that if there becomes an issue that could be one of the factors that the player has lost form or whatever. Okay, so as an assistant, you play this more friendly role with those players. And you've got to partially be their friend without getting too close. And that becomes invaluable because you find so much information out about team chemistry, what's going on the field, but also what's going on off the field. So overall, you've got to be able to put yourself wherever. I've got there integrating themselves and getting on with the support staff. Crucial. You've got to get on with everybody, because one day, as the head coach, you're going to have to do that in the number one role. Okay? I'm just going to go through this, and I'm going to make it interactive, you know, a little guided recovery. Okay. Sorry about that. But as you can see there, you know, that's at a Salt Lake training session way back. And you've got to pick and choose and know your head coach in that. But we need a little laugh now and then, you know. So, silly old Mella, that's what he does. You know, and all the guys have a laugh and go, stupid coach, you know. But at the same time, it just lightens things. So, you know, the head coach has got to stay more that serious. The assistant coach is able to guide and sort of decide what they can do without overstepping boundaries. Okay, when a problem arises, don't just tell the head coach the problem. Also suggest to them a possible solution. So if I find out through being a fly on the wall, or however that comes about, some information about a player, and I feel, okay, the coach needs to know we've got a problem, then before I go to him and make him aware of that problem, I'm going to think of how would I handle that as a solution to it, the matter. Because you want to become a head coach, so one day you're going to have to do that. Okay, so you're going to have solutions. So it's a good learning curve for you. Think of the head coach's needs and do them before he asks. So be proactive, okay? Even if it's putting cones out and doing things, the mundane things. Those are so important in you showing the head coach that you're still humble and you've not arrived yet, but you're prepared to do whatever it takes to arrive, okay? Careful in conversations not to undermine the head coach with players, staff in particular. You know, sometimes you'll be together and the head coach is addressing a player. Before you as an assistant coach add your two pennyworth, make sure prior to the meeting that the head coach is okay with you saying something, that they don't just want you there in body, but it's okay for you to add something, your views or your thoughts to support, obviously, the head coach and the situation. Give your honest opinions, but if the head coach goes in a different direction, do the best job in his direction. I addressed that a little earlier in one of the main 4 qualities. But all the time, you have to do that. As much as you may not want to, has to be done. And then, of course, you know, usually most head coaches are the bad cop. You know, so again, being a good cop. And it can be the other way, okay? So, you know, a little bit, when I was with John Ellinger, that's how it was. He was, even though his own person, he was the good cop because he was very standoffish, you know, in terms of the daily training and this, that, and the other. And at times, you know, I'd be stood with him and he'd go, "What's he doing? What's he doing?" And I don't know, coach. Well, go tell him. Go tell him. So I've got to be the bad cop for him. But that's fine. That's the relationship. And I really enjoyed doing that, even though I'm a nice guy. And it's always hard for me to shout at people. But that's the way it is. So, sorry. I've gone through that. And I want to open this up in a short while for questions and some discussion. But the young youth assistant coach in particular, okay, that we're talking, you know, the club levels in our youth programs. If you've just gotten into the game and you're looking to make a career of coaching. These, to me, are very important areas that you have to look at and you have to address in your development as an assistant. Open-minded, does not have any set ideas of systems of play or formations. Learn them all. Down the road, you have to make a decision which is the best when you become a number one for your team. Does not care what their role is. We have too many young assistant coaches that, you know, get a coaching license or sometimes don't even have one, but have played and maybe played 4 years of college and so on, and probably should still be playing, but they're not, and they've come into the game in an assistant coach's role. But let's make sure that if you're one of those, you're not on a fast track, okay? And for those that want to see another presentation tomorrow about climbing the coaching ladder, I address that in a lot of depth. And there'll be a panel discussion with Robbie Stoll. So think about what your role is and whatever it takes, get it done, okay? After I got fired from Salt Lake, I went down to Fort Myers, Florida to run a youth program, back into good old youth soccer, right? One day, I'm out there pushing a liner, white line. I'm thinking, cool, I've come a long way in the game. I'm painting the lines. I've come a long way in the game, you know, playing at Wembley and this, that, and the other. But I was happy with myself because it was for the kids, it was for the game, and it was good for me to bring me back down to earth. So whatever your role is, just do it, okay? Doesn't matter what it is. Okay? Ask a lot of questions. They want to improve as a soccer coach. So ask your head coach. Ask other coaches. I mean, this is a fantastic opportunity. You know, we all spend till 3, 4 in the bar, and that's where some of the best dialogue goes, talking about the game. That's where we learn. But again, have this open-mindedness. Detail-oriented. Be organized, okay? Don't just show up at your practice. You know, plan with your head coach prior and make sure that you've got your lesson plan. You know, if you're going to be doing some of the session, you know what you're doing. You're out there to improve the lives of the kids. So think of your role, okay? What we are all doing as youth coaches in particular, even it goes for the professional level, is we are using the holistic values of life. We're using the game of soccer to show those. Whether it's winning, losing, sharing, okay? All of those values, as an assistant coach in particular, we need to understand those kids and what our role is in society, to be honest. Okay? We also need to be great listeners and observers. Students of the game, okay? We're so lucky now, especially with the amount of soccer on TV, and that, to really get into it. And I love it with all the slow-mo you can do now with, you know, whatever network you're on and that, you can stop it. And my wife, I've been married 45 years. For 43 of those years, she supported me 100% with what I do. But she had no interest in the game. A couple of people know my wife here, and when I say no interest, that was my living. But this last 2 years, she's the one now at night time saying, what have you got recorded? What Premiership games? What MLS game? She's asking me, and I'm getting up there, and I'm having to stop it and teach her the game. It's incredible. So, you know, always being open to learning. So as I said to her, it's never too late, right? Maybe we can get you in the women's national coaching. Take whatever tasks they were given and excel at the task, okay? that, obviously, we've covered. Volunteer to help at nearly every turn. You know, again, make yourself wanted, because if you are working with somebody that's respected in particular and has a great sort of coaching pedigree, they see that. That's what helps you get on, because word of mouth is what happens, okay? You know, between coaches, they talk. Oh, you're looking for an assistant? Hey, tell you, I had this guy. Very good. Okay, so again, you know, look at that and make sure you continue to develop yourself and do whatever it takes. Ask underlying whys without being abrasive. That's called management of yourself, you know. I mean, you've got to tell the truth, but there's a way of telling the truth, okay? Can't tell a young player, you suck, right? Excuse the expression, but you can't. Indirectly you can, so he gets it, or that she gets it. So think how you present yourself to your players. We talked about the decision making, implement the decision. Good assistant coach are calm and have the game in perspective. Watch them coach other sports or as a fan, okay? So again, it's that, you know, being a student of the game. Are not complainers or excuse makers. They are doers, okay? And those are the things that we can all make excuses, you know, about Man United not having their best two players, you know, available at the moment. You know, that's why they're losing. We don't want to hear that from the coaches, okay? That's a part of our job, is to deal with that. We cannot make it an excuse. We can't complain about it, okay? I'm a Man City fan. There's a Man United fans in here, so I'm very happy at the moment. You know, but even Man City's got one of their best top players out. So it's the same sort of difference. Just get on with it. Okay, so where are we? Are not complainers. Okay, we talked about that. Admit their lack of knowledge and admit mistakes freely. That's very, very important, okay? Every day we learn. I learn, honestly, every day, by listening, by watching. So let's make sure that we don't, you know, get caught up where I've got my opinions. I don't care what anybody else says. That's the way it is, okay? At least listen to other people's opinions, because very early in my career, I made that a habit. And I think that's helped me, you know, achieve what I've achieved to date in these roles, okay? So think about that particular aspect. Want to get all the kids into the games. Wow. As an assistant coach, it's not all about winning at the youth levels. We understand it's a very important component. But as an assistant coach, your role sometimes with a head coach is to say, Coach, we need to give some, you know, they've been training hard. Because you know, as an assistant, sometimes a little bit more about who's where. Because the head coach is focusing just on the so-called starting 11 or 13. And sometimes, you know, 16, 17 has been working really hard. And you've got to try and help make sure we get those kids time. They've earned the right. So, got to balance it off, because certainly at the older ages, you know, 16, 17, 18, winning becomes more and more important. But at these early ages, you know, 11, 12, 13, 14, let the kids play. Give them a chance. If you're a good coach, you manage it. If you're an assistant coach, you've got to help your head coach manage it. So that's a big role, because they're going to be guided by what you say. Okay? People that have had success in other parts of their lives. Okay? So, again, we look at all of these different areas of an assistant coach's role, and it's a heck of a job. It shouldn't just be, oh, I'm the assistant coach, one day I'm going to be a head coach. How do I get there? What do I do? What do I say? How do I act? And that. So I'm going to sort of stop right there because we're going to open it up. I want some questions. But before I do that, I'd like to bring up, where's Derek? Derek Broadley? Okay. And Derek has been an assistant coach. He's with the Knoxville Soccer Club, youth level, has tremendous experience too at the top level as well as the youth level. And Derek, I'd like you to just come up, and I think the microphone's live. If you'd just like to add your 2 pennies, then we'll open it up to all of you coaches to ask questions, and we'll give you the benefit of our experience. Thank you.
Okay, Peter threw this on me about 5 minutes before he got up on the stage. But one of the things, I was very fortunate that I was an assistant to many of the top coaches in England, and in the youth level mainly. John Cartwright, who ran the national school at Lillishall. And then throughout my career, I managed to work with a lot of good people. And one of the things that I would throw into Peter's mix is that sometimes the role of an assistant doesn't have to be a stepping stone. The role of an assistant coach can be a career in itself. You don't always have to be pushing to go to the next level. You know, I think if you look at some people, that is particularly in the top of the game, and I'll throw one out there. I was very lucky that I did my my UEFA conversion course with him. There's a guy called Brian Kidd, who's actually at Manchester City. And, you know, he was at Manchester United. I think he came through with Alex Ferguson. And then if you look beyond that, he then tried the role as manager in the Premier League with Blackburn. Didn't quite work out, and now he's gone back to being that assistant role. And I think all the qualities that Peter's put up on the board, he displays them all the time. And even while I was on the course, you know, he always said that to us. He knew I was a young coach at the time, and he's saying, listen, you might not want to be the head guy. You might not, you know, make the role of the assistant yourself. Now, ultimately, I did have ambition, and I did want to take on some roles. I was academy director at Crystal Palace for about 4 years. And I was also the technical director in Bermuda, and I'd like to have the opportunity to do it. But I do know several people in the game worldwide that are happy to be the assistant role. They display all the qualities, as I said, that have been put before you today, and I think that they're very keen to stay in that role. I think it can be used as a stepping stone, but as I said, I think there is a role for assistants all the time, and in particularly in the youth level. You know, I think that, you know, I just listened to the Bayern Munich guy, and he was telling me that they have specialists, and they have people that are specialist number twos, that don't have ambition to be the number one. Okay? You know, they want to be seen in the back. They have better people skills possibly than some of the head coaches they work with. And as I said, so I'll take, you know, as Peter said, I'll share my experiences with people. As I said, I was one of the ones that did want to take the lead, but I do know several people, and I have former colleagues that have gone from assistant role in one position to assistant role in another position to assistant role in another position, because that's where their skill set took them. Okay?
Right. Great. Well, questions. Please, anybody have any questions based on the communications we've given you here with regards to that role? Coach?
Just that, yeah.
Well, again, it depends what level you're at, but I think it doesn't really matter, because I think you do have, in today, you've got to do due diligence. You've got to call, you know, get references. You've got to talk to people that you feel comfortable with, or references that they've given that know that particular person, because, you know, it's a very important role to do it correctly, and you've got to do everything you can, you know, to find out as much as you can about somebody you don't know too much about. So, you know, spend time. Don't just jump at it. Don't just jump at a name. It could be somebody just coming out of playing, was a great player, Well, we've all seen that too. I played with Bobby Moore, you know, fantastic, world-class, you know, can't say enough about Bobby. But he failed miserably as a coach, right? So, you know, make sure that you know the person. Spend the time to do that and interview them. That's the best way. Even, you know, if it's possible, depending what your situation is, bring them in to maybe run a session or something if it's a youth club. Put them on the hot spot. Yeah. Good question.
Sorry, if I can add to that. I mean, the other thing is, have a description in your mind of what you want from an assistant. I mean, Peter's laid out a very detailed, you know, all the qualities and stuff. But, you know, if you can specifically say, these are the things, these are the roles that I want to have done. And a lot of the time, when you're looking for an assistant, if I flip it, you're looking for someone that's probably got more strengths where your weaknesses are. It could be administration. There's the obvious one. It could be simply administration. But it could be more than that. You know, as I said, I think sometimes, and again, if you look at the, you know, Peter mentioned one which really hit home to me. I remember I was one of these young coaches, and I could name drop, but I would want to put their cones out all the time. Always in the back of my mind, I was worried that I might put it wrong, but because I saw their session plan, I knew what they wanted. I made sure that, you know, they told me if it was a 10-yard grid, I counted it out religiously. You know, as Peter said, do it, you know, detail. So I made sure everything was done as an assistant. So if you've got a framework of what you want to do and you can present them someone, and then it goes through the process of interviewing and spending time with them.
Yeah, because if you're a head coach in here, no matter how good you are, we all have a weak area. You know, and if you don't think you have, then you need to revisit the mirror, right? But at the end of the day, what the good head coaches do, they surround themselves with assistants that are very capable to offset their weak area, whatever we want to call it. So, again, you know, as Derek said, that all has to come into the mix. If you're a head coach, identify your weak areas and make sure in your interview, what you're looking at, your job description, that those are the areas that you get covered. So it makes you look great when you win all the games, right?
Can I just give one example? I won't show you the names, but I know someone that works as he's now at the top of the game. He's a Premier League manager, but when he was at a previous club, he employed his best friend to be the assistant coach when he was at a lower division team, and he actually sacked that person because he wasn't what he was looking for. He actually ruined the friendship. But basically, what happened is he says, my mistake was I employed him without thinking, and in the end he ended up letting them go. They went on to manage, they went on and had a career, but at that particular time, and as I said, it's a very famous manager, but he sacked his best friend because it wasn't what he was looking for.
Yeah. Yes, Coach.
How do you avoid being typecast and not just being an open coach?
Sorry, could you just...
How do you avoid being not typecast or just an open coach?
How do you? Great question. As I said earlier, you know, goalkeeping coaches have, over the past years, have got pigeonholed. That's all you are. The goalkeeping coach must be an assistant coach. How do you make that happen? Obviously, I talked about working not just technically with the goalkeepers, but then getting involved tactically with the team. So if you are, I think a goalkeeping coach is an assistant, all right? So I see you as an assistant, not just a goalkeeper, if that's what you are or that's what you're talking about. Make sure that you get the opportunity to work with the unit. It may be through the goalkeeper's eyes, okay, working with the back four, whatever. Because you need to have the ability of dealing with the unit. You've got to know the game just as well as the head coach or a regular assistant, non-goalkeeping coach and that. So really, it's getting, you know, to that stage where tactically you can work through the goalkeeper, though, because that's how you can sell it to the head coach. Because if we think of the head coach or an assistant coaches, non-goalkeeping coaches, where do they usually watch practice or training from? They're either on the sideline right? Or they're involved in the practice looking into the goals. Well, you as a goalkeeping coach, have a whole different perspective. You're in looking out instead of out looking in. And I'll tell you, that's why we have a week-long goalkeeping course that's going to start in 2 weeks' time with the Federation. Because that is the opportunity there, not just to be a goalkeeping trainer, but to be a true goalkeeping / assistant coach. Okay? So you've got to make that happen. All right? Yeah. Coach, right at the back. What is the assistant's role prior to and during a game? Well, that really depends on the personality of the head coach in terms of what they do or don't like to do. Okay? So you've got to really look at whether you're going to do the pre-game warm-up as the assistant, whether the head coach likes to do it or not. Okay? So you've got to really talk to your coach, find out what their needs are, and then try and just fit in accordingly, but still, get the development that you want in your ongoing education too. Yeah. So it really depends on the personality of the coach, I would say.
Yeah. Again, I think a lot of coaches, especially, I bet you've never seen a Premier League manager out doing the warm-up on a Premier League game, or the same in La Liga. They do have now, and I think at the top end, where they've got specialists they've got specialist warm-up coaches now and stuff like that. So that happens there. But I think I always come back to the youth level, and I think that I've seen various things. I've seen, the assistant coach warms up the goalkeeper, which sometimes can be seen as a negative, but at least the goalkeeper's getting some attention. So I think it can be dependent. And then, as I said, I think at the youth level, head coaches want to be more hands-on. And again, sometimes there's nothing wrong with splitting the group. It could be the subs and the starters. And again, I think when I was an assistant coach, I was very lucky that I was one of these people that was afforded a chance to do lots of different things. But if you want to become the warm-up coach, you've got to specialise and you've got to know what's involved in a warm-up. And that comes back to Peter's point on his slide about gaining as much knowledge as you can.
Yeah. And I think also, during the course of the game, what's your role? I think that was part of your question. Obviously, again, it depends on the relationship, but I would say, unless asked, you keep your mouth shut, okay? And, again, the head coach is either going to be animated or the quiet type, okay? There seems to be a lot more animated coaches than quiet, certainly the lower levels you go in terms of youth and that. So you've got to understand where you fit in with that. As I talked about, not letting the coach get too emotional, helping them with that, knowing how much you can say based on their personality and that. So, I would never really, unless he asked me, I would never say anything to Bruce Arena, with the national team, no, that's bullshit. Excuse me, and like, even if I thought it was or wasn't, unless he said, "What do you think?" Stay quiet, because that's his personality, and I owe a lot to Bruce. I love the guy. I think he's great. So again, in the game, I believe your job is just to watch and support the coach, give information if he asks for it. At Salt Lake, I used to have to do all the free kicks, so if there was a substitution, all heck's let loose, because now your walls are changing, blah, 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 and you've got a lot to do. So that's all pre-planned, obviously, okay? Okay. Questions? Yes, Coach?
Don't you think it's important that the assistant coach basically does the interview process of the head coach, especially if you're looking to progress on, just the head coach can check out the assistant?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Derek.
No, I do. I think, as I said, I think there's an assumption here that everyone who becomes an assistant wants to become the head coach, okay? But that might not always be the case. And as I said, I think there's a process that you've got to go through. But definitely, I think that's a great point, and I think that, for me, the head coach really should have an input into every aspect of what goes on beneath them. You know, I've just read Alex Ferguson's book, and if you watch it, anyone who's read the book's fantastic book, and he knows the tea ladies, he knows everybody, and he has an input into everything that goes on. And to me, there's never a better example of a head coach than someone like Sir Alex with his longevity and so on. But if you read his book, it's the detail that he goes into so much further down the line. So the point you made is valid and definitely appropriate.
Yeah. Coach?
Is it a healthy way to, when you're working on a training session topic, like let's say head coach works on a 5-4 system and let the assistant coach work with part of the team, work on the attack? Because when you coach, you want to coach one specific attack. It's not
Sure.
dual.
Yeah.
Years of experience. Is that a healthy thing to do?
I think it's very healthy. Yeah, you know, based on your training week and everything, I mean, you know, it happens all the time at the top level. If there's an assistant coach that's, you know, respected and can coach, where that will happen, you know. I mean, at Salt Lake, you know, I had to work with John or in the under-17 national residency program, you know, going right back to Landon Donovan's year and DeMarcus Beasley and them. I used to be able to get the unit, the back four, and that. But John, or we had a second assistant, and you know, eventually John Hackworth came in. They would take maybe the forwards or the attacking aspects of it, and then we'd come together at the end. You know, we'd put it all together as we do in our, you know, overall lesson plan or what we're going to do. But I think it's very, very healthy because you're getting a 2-for-1, aren't you? You know, and as long as you've communicated as to what the two of you before the session in the lesson plan, what is going to be done, then it's easy peasy, right? Or should be. So again, communication is important so that you're not overstepping as an assistant something that the head coach may not want in your information or your organization tactically, okay? Coach.
In a professional setting or in a large coaching staff, as an assistant coach, how do you go about handling relationship with other assistant coaches? I could be younger, I want to, you know, I strive to be head coaches. I'm comfortable with being an assistant goalkeeper coach. I like that. How do you go about handling maybe younger coaches that feel like this kind of competition because you're on the same level?
Yeah, you're talking about more than one assistant in a club. Okay, so there's 2 or 3. Well, that's part of, again, the manager's, the coach's, head coach's role. Still got the English manager in mind. But, you know, those have to be, you know, parameters and you know, time he spends explaining, you know, individually and sometimes collectively with those coaches, you know, what he expects from them. And on the one-on-one situations, if one of the assistants is, you know, thinking they've arrived a little early, is making sure that, you know, he brings them down. But that becomes, again, the head coach. Are they a good manager of people? You know, because it's managing your staff, just like you've got to manage your players. So it really is the head coach's job to settle things down if, you know, you've got a little bit of, you know, everybody's trying to get up the ladder, as we say. So, yeah.
So I'm sure you've been setting where, I mean, do you mentor them? Because you were,
Yes,
you were
absolutely.
one, you
Yeah.
assist the head coach into mentoring them?
Yeah.
How do you go about it?
To me, you've hit the word, you know, or the nail on the head with the word mentor. That, to me, is what I love to do, and I know it's what Derek loves to do, you know. So you would hope that in those settings, obviously there's a lot of pressure at the top level to win, that head coach isn't all about what's happening on the field, but what's happening in my own, you know, coach's locker room, okay? Who's who and what's what and where they're at. And mentoring is part of being a good leader. Okay, because, sorry. Okay, hang on, let me just finish this, yeah, because I want Derek to come in on this too. So, again, at the end of the day, it's down to the head coach. If they don't identify it and it happens, then you know all heck can let loose too, because of egos. So,
As a good assistant, see, now I can get my bit in. But the mentoring bit, as Peter said, I think is vital. But one of the, when you become a head coach, you become a mentor, whether you want to or be or not. And the most important thing for me there is you have to mentor the good and the bad. A lot of mentors just want to see the positives, but part of your role as a mentor is to mentor the bad parts and manage it. Okay, and that you get people beneath you. And when you talk about over-ambitious, I think in the professional ranks at youth level, there is a big ambition. People want to get on very quickly, and there's nothing wrong with that. But managing that is an art. It's very special because you've got to lay things out. And I think that one of the things is to have a specific role, even if it's in your mind. If you can lay it out to that person, I think it's great. But setting the tone. Setting out the roles and responsibilities of each coach, if you have multiple coaches. And then there's always natural progression anyway. It can be within age group. Some clubs have multiple teams at one age group, where they tier them. And I think what you need, the secret is to actually try and get people working at the right level. And I think that's one of the things that when I came to America I found very, very difficult to understand, because in England there's qualifications that go alongside different roles and responsibilities. Here, it's coming now and more with the qualifications now. But now, trying to find it and pitch the appropriate people at the appropriate level is the secret. And as long as that ambitious coach can see progression laid out in front of them clearly, your job as a mentor then is to keep them on that path and help them progress to that level.
yeah, it's a good question. Very good. Yeah.
Question
Couple more. Yes, coach.
Do you think it's important there's only one voice, or do you think it works better with
When you,
half-time and 3 games?
yeah, again, an excellent question. I think, again, that has to be predetermined through the head coach, because, sometimes at half-time, certainly if we're not doing so well as a team and there's a bunch of things that we need to address, come in and the head coach says their piece. Well, it depends really how much they've said, how many areas of, your checklist, maybe your notes you've made and that. And you've got to be careful, because the players, after they've heard 2 or 3 areas, that are important for the team to change for the second half, they're probably going to switch off because they want, I guess their cup of tea. But I think they don't have cups of tea now, right? It's special milkshakes and stuff at the top level anyway, with nutrition in. But and the other thing is that, the assistant coach, even though they've got their opinions and that, what I think is what an assistant becomes more valuable for is one-on-one with players. So let the head coach address the team, bring out the coaching points they want to get to, and then when they're finished, okay, you go and talk to the goalkeeper a little bit about, hey, you've done well, but just be careful of this, or you need to come a little bit more, those cross balls, I think you've been a little line cut, whatever. So I think it's a combination. But again, it's something you have to talk to the head coach about. Do you want me adding my 2 pennyworth, or do you want me just to do a one-on-one? I like the one-on-one, supporting the head coach. Yeah, because they don't usually listen to assistant coaches anyway, right? Yeah. Question? Yes, coach.
You were saying you obviously support head coach all the time, but it's also your job on the line with their decisions. I think there is a time that you step back and say, look, I disagree with your decision, or despite you always have to follow support it.
Well, again, that's where you're dealing with what I'm saying. It's a game of opinions. And your opinion at that time is, I think your session was crap, right? Is that what you're saying? Well, At the top level, I've never been a head coach, okay? I would say that as far as the assistant is concerned, that if I was a head coach, based on everything I've learned and the questions that everybody's asked here, I would want my assistant coach to give me feedback. Am I doing a good job? And if not, why not? You know, that depends on the head coach. The word is intimidation, okay? On where they're at in their head coaching careers and that, you know, whether they see you, is this guy after my job? Okay, well, maybe I'd have been at Salt Lake if I was after John Ellinger's job, because I could have stabbed him in the back 3 or 4 times, and I didn't, because of loyalty and the values that I've talked about today. Maybe they wouldn't have taken me anyway if I'd gone after it. But I can remember with the owner, him coming up to me when we're having a bad time in our second year and saying, "How's John?" Well, I could have stabbed him big time. And it wasn't just once, he did it 3 or 4 times where he came up and asked me. I said, he's fine. We're going to work through this. You know, we got good people and all of that. So my loyalty may have cost me, an opportunity of becoming a head coach. But you know what? I can sleep, I can stand up here, and I can share what was good for me and how I feel about it. So I don't know whether that answers your question. Yeah. Okay, we got time for another question, because I need to show you a little clip at the end. Yes, Coach?
If you were transitioning from an assistant coach, especially college level, to be the same team head coach, relate to how you have a relationship with one another players, how would you best transition to that role if you were going?
Yeah. That's a good, and I'd like Derek also to add his thoughts on this, but you know, that's a great question, because it happens quite a lot, even in the top level. And you know, right off, obviously the role changes as the number one. That's a team meeting right away, you know, where you've played this role, and now you've got to really, before you have that meeting, think about how you're going to manage it, because you've made that move up, and you're obviously going to appoint an assistant, okay? So between the two of you, you have to have a game plan that you develop before you go into that meeting, so that your assistant, your new assistant, and you as the new head coach understand how you're going to support one another, and you have to identify the areas as an assistant that maybe you were weak in, and that the players picked up on, and make sure that you somehow address them without saying, "Hey, I was weak in this," but just say, "Hey, you know, from now on, you know, the assistant coach is going to take care of this and this and this." You know, the things that maybe you weren't good at, but you have to understand and respect. I'm the number one now, and what I say goes. Okay, so again, your new assistant becomes very important to you, because they've got to have your back now, because you want to get off to a flying start as that new appointed coach. Derek?
I think, to answer your question, timing's everything. You know, when you know, are you taking the position because you want to step up and do it, or have you been elevated? I think sometimes people get elevated very quickly. The coach leaves and they make a decision to appoint the assistant within the same organisation. I think it's a smoother transition when you leave one organisation and go to another one, because everything's new and you seem to have a lot more focus in it. And trying to change something that someone's already put in place is always more difficult. So if you take that jump from being an assistant to a head coach, I think you tend to see it from a different perspective. And then how you view your assistant is basically, I think a lot of the time, is based on your previous experience of what you wanted and what you did as an assistant. I was very fortunate that one of my mentors, one of the guys I was assistant for 5 years, his personal skills and interpersonal skills were fantastic, and I'd like to think that was one of the things I took on board. You know, everywhere I went, he treated me. He was the boss. It was like he was my dad. He did everything for me. And then when I did eventually make that step up, that was one of the qualities that I saw in him that I tried to do myself. So I think, you know, the transition, as I said, if you go internal, it's also a lot more difficult because people sometimes can compare you to the guy before or whatever, and they see change. And, you know, I think there's no right or wrong, but for me, I had a better experience when I moved organisation and took on a role, and I had better success appointing people in a new organisation than I did in one that I'd already progressed up through. But at youth level, I think, you know, if we go really back down to the U9, 10, 11 coaches, I think bringing them on and having a club structure enables these people to progress and enables you to move on and bring other people up with you. Yeah. I think it's very important in the youth systems.
Great. Well, I've taken the liberty of just sharing these. I'm very proud of them because I believe in the game you talk about what you've done, not what you're going to do. You know, oh, we're going to beat them 6-0, and then you lose 6-0. But I'm very proud of it. You know, I asked these three people when I took the job with the United Soccer Leagues as the National Technical Director to say something about me, okay? And you can see there, you know, based on what we've just been talking about, whether it's a player or whether it's Bruce Arena, I'm very flattered that that's how they see me. And, you know, hopefully I can stay in this game till the day I pass on and the whole thing and do what I believe is good for our game, because we're well on the way, coaches. We just have to continue to be patient. You know, like I said, we're like a big active volcano. We haven't erupted yet, but inside is all the molten lava. That's all of you, coaches, that are doing everything you can to develop the game. And I get asked all the time, well, when are you going to win a World Cup? I said, hey, it's coming. And I use the analogy of the volcano and the active. One day, we will erupt. The problem is I can't tell when the eruption date is going to be. Okay? Now, I'd like to just finish off with this. It's got to load, so you'll just have to bear with me. Maybe we'll take one question while it comes up, but I want to leave you with this because this is how not to be an assistant coach. Okay? So, anybody got one question before? Okay, it's coming up now, so. Nobody? You've had enough of me now, right? Yeah. Okay, coach, go on, just while it's... Who do I think the best goalkeeper in the world is? Timmy Howard. Hey, I'm an American. No, you know, there's some good ones, but just whilst we're on that waiting, I'll add this to, you know, again, my opinions. I think at the moment, I think we're drying up a little bit with the goalkeeping position. Oh, here we go. Oh, he gets the goalkeeper up. Okay, Coaches, I hope we've given you the benefit of our opinions. It's a game of opinions. Thank you for your time. Good luck with everything. See you again.